Okay, so good morning everyone and welcome to this fantastic panel, Overcoming Adversity in STEM, brought to you by the PPA, Dose of Pharma, HRM and Mosaic. So it's truly a collaborative event and thank you very much to the organisers. So I'm Betty Exantaris, I'm familiar to most of you, but just in case you've forgotten, I'm the Associate Dean Learning and Teaching and also the Associate Dean of Equity, Diversity and Inclusion. Now, today's theme really resonates with me, as what many of you don't know is that I've had 2 corneal transplants and likely to have another 2 corneal transplants in my lifetime. And as a university student and early career researcher, I was what used to be called legally blind, now referred to as low vision. That was a long time ago. It's certainly not something I spoke about, and certainly there weren't support structures in place at the university nor in the workplace. I'm so happy that the landscape has really changed, but of course we can always do more. On our panel today, we have Dr. Vanessa Penna. Welcome. Brendan Moore. Welcome to you. And Dr. Justin Carrero. And welcome to Justin as well. So without any further delay, I'll ask the panel to introduce themselves, even though I just did. Tell us what they do and also what they're known for. Over to you.
So my name is Brendan Moore. I'm a senior process engineer at Melbourne Water. I have a chemical engineering degree and a Bachelor of Biotechnology with majors in pharmacology and biochemistry from the University of Adelaide. I am not a doctor, so don't hold that against me. But I've been working in the industry for about 15 years now, in the water industry specifically. And what I'm known for is besides being a nuisance, co-founding Pride in Water, which is Australia's LGBTIQ+ network for people working in the water industry and advocating for customers of the water industry, which, given how ubiquitous the water industry is, that's everybody. So there we go.
Hi everyone. So I'm Dr. Justin Carrero. So pretty much what I do is I jokingly refer to myself as a pracademic. I have a management consulting background. And then I went into academia some years ago and specifically looked at inclusion research, particularly from an intersectionality lens, looking at neurodivergence as well as gender. And so what I focused on throughout my PhD was examining the sustainability of targeted hiring programs that a lot of companies have been doing in recent years. Autism at work, advancing Black pathways, so on and so forth. But the challenge is that these have delivered really inconsistent outcomes. And it's created quite a high degree of controversy. So what I focused on in the PhD was essentially going back to the drawing board to say, how do we cultivate, well, let's answer 3 questions. What is inclusion? How do we cultivate it? But then how do we make it transferable across multiple demographic groups? So that's what I became known for, essentially. I ended up developing what's called the optimal inclusion model. It was then tested in a company-wide survey this past year to about 5,000 people. And it was found to work for not just autistic, but non-autistic, ADHD, men, women. And so that was a huge breakthrough. And so pretty much what I've become known for since then is pretty much being the inclusion guy, as well as having a real passion for advancing our equity in organizations for various demographic groups. And depending if you were to ask students versus my friends, you will get drastically different answers as to what I'm known for. Students will say the loud American. My friends will also say the loud American. So, just take your pick. But that's me.
Hi everyone, I'm Vanessa. I am known probably for changing my career path many times. I started my life career path in Brazil as a dentist. I worked as a dentist for 6 years doing surgery most of the time. Found it very boring. People were afraid of me all the time. I could not talk to my patients, so it was very solitary. That's why dentists talk to you when you cannot talk, trust me. And then I decided to just sell everything, do a master's, go to the scientific part. I did a master's in tissue engineering in Brazil. They used to work with stem cells from wisdom tooth. That was kind of the link. And I came to Australia with a PhD scholarship from University of Melbourne in neuroscience. Absolutely nothing related to dentistry, but they would work with stem cells for Parkinson's disease. After finishing my PhD, I decided to move to industry, and now I work with clinical trials, doing the management in clinical trials, not necessarily related to neuroscience. It's a cancer-related research with radioimmunotherapy. So I had to learn a new bunch of things like radiation decay that, trust me, I did not remember from dentistry. We did not have that. So I think that's my path and what I'm known for. So I kind of help people. That's how I like to see that I do help people move in careers, or when they have challenges, understanding what they can do with the background that they have. Sometimes people don't realize where they can apply what they know already to something absolutely different. So I like to believe that I kind of help them quite a lot with that.
Thank you very much. What a wide variety of STEM careers. Fantastic.
I know, right?
Yeah,
it took me
indeed.
40 years to know what I like.
40 years, okay. All right. Okay, so next question, and I'm afraid, Brendan, just because I have the microphone, it's going to be you next again. Is that all right?
That's all right.
Okay, excellent. So firstly, Brendan, what's something that you're proud of? And it can be personal or career related.
I think, going back to what I mentioned about co-founding Pride in Water was a really big movement. So the water industry is surprisingly very conservative, or was very conservative. It's made quite a few strides in the last couple of years. And, being able to take the initiative to really off the back of the marriage equality debate, which was very controversial to talk about at work because a lot of water organisations are government owned or government funded, and therefore that's a political aspect. It was considered to talk about the marriage equality debate. So it was very hush-hush, don't say anything. But like I said, I'm a bit of a nuisance. And so myself and my co-founder, an amazing woman called Jackie Moon, we worked together at an organisation called Garibaldi Water, and we were like, it's a bit shit, we're going to change this. And so started to take small steps, and it's made large ripples, mind the water pun, throughout the industry, to the fact that it's now a national movement, and we've got pretty much all the water organisations signed up to it, so that 98% of, I think, Australia's population is covered by a water organisation that is committed to making change for LGBTIQ plus employees and customers. So that's something I'm really proud of. The other thing I'm really proud of is helping to establish the first recycled water offset scheme, which is a very common term, I think, when people think of carbon. But when we had large construction projects that were wanting to use potable water, and we didn't have access to get them recycled water, we set up agreements with some of the construction projects that they would pay for community assets to be built, so that parks and sporting fields could be supplied with recycled water in terms of a bit of an offset scheme. So that recently got off the grounds last year, and it's something that very impactful from an environmental sense, and I'm very proud of as well. So yeah, there's a gay proud movement and a day job proud movement. So there you go.
Fantastic.
At the risk of sounding rude, it would have to be that inclusion model, and here's why. When I first came up with the preliminary design to it, when it emerged, because a high degree of academics were publishing in inclusion literature saying true inclusion is not possible. And when I started to ask why, the only explanation anybody could give was, well, in order for something to be considered included, you would have to have the opposite of something being excluded by comparison in order to make it true. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, have you ever literally tested this in any company to see if that is actually true? And not a single person could say they had. So then when I started developing the preliminary model, I said, we have to rethink what this actually is. And so what I came in with was saying, one, it is a biological human need. There is a socially moral initiative to it, yes, but fundamentally it's something we biologically need. But when I started developing it, there were key stakeholders involved in my PhD research at the time, who, when I shared it with them, the early work, knowing I'm ADHD, by the way, first words they said to me was, Justin, you need to focus. You're thinking too much. You're all over the place with this. And so I share this story because both from academics as well as people who were involved in my professional development were telling me right from the beginning, this is terrible, this is bad, this is this is that. It was just constant, this can't work. But the salient theme throughout all of them is that not a single person had ever tried it first before they reached that conclusion. Which was a bit ironic because in academia, we're social scientists. We don't make conclusions or say something can or cannot work unless we try it first. So it was a bit ironic in that regard. But that ended up becoming what I became most proud of because it was 2 years, quite literally, of people telling me, no, this isn't going to work. That's not possible. That's not possible. And then we made it possible. So that's, for me, what I would have to say.
I think the main part that I am proud of, and it's literally just looking at myself, is resilience. I am very resilient. I came to Australia, obviously, with this accent. I'm not Australian. So I think moving to Australia was already a challenge, feeling lonely, not expressing myself the way that I wanted, not having many friends because I could not show my personality at the beginning to all of them. So that was a challenge. The PhD in neuroscience, a second challenge. I started using the wheelchair during my PhD, third challenge. So it was a lot of things happening at the same time. So, and everything, at the end worked quite well. So I think resilience I am proud of. Yeah.
Thank you very much, everyone. Fantastic. Okay, so now I'm going to move on and ask you some questions. Firstly about challenges, then support, and lastly I'll move to advocacy. Is that okay? Excellent. So first question regarding challenges. So what specific challenges have you faced in your STEM career due to your background or identity, and how did you navigate these obstacles? Brendan?
It's great. I get to say all the answers first, and so luckily we have very different life journeys, so that I'm not stealing somebody else's answers. But for me, the two biggest things that I've come across in my career where my identity or part of me that kind of led to some level of adversity. The first one is that I identify as a queer man. I've spent my career working in construction and operations and engineering spaces and surrounded by a lot of older blue-collar workers. And that's not to throw every blue-collar worker under the bus. There are a lot of amazing people out there, but it is not an environment or a culture where queer people are often welcomed. So there was a lot of adversity in terms of just physically feeling safe, to the fact that I wasn't actually out at work until I was 27. So because I just thought letting people know that aspects of my life would actually hamper my career progression. We're not going to send the gay guy out to work in a rural town on a big construction project. We're not going to let them, lead a bunch of people who have mixed education levels and mixed experiences. So that was something that really what kicked off me coming out was actually the marriage equality debate, and just, like I said, wanting to be a nuisance and wanting to get it started. So, that's how I really overcame that. And my co-worker, Jackie Moon, that I talked about before, the two of us really just had to let the rainbow flag fly and just really put it into people's faces and be like, actually you don't have a choice about whether or not you're comfortable with this or not. This is who we are. We have a right to feel safe, and this is what we're going to do about it. The second time relates to, the fact that I'm 35 now, so you put me in that millennial category. And, a couple of years ago, just had a whole lot of stuff in life just go wrong and hit that burnt-out millennial stage that I think is very popular at the moment. And got diagnosed with ADHD very late in life, which made a lot of things... Yeah, brother. So it put a lot of things in perspective, and it kind of explained, why I always had 1,000 projects on the go, and, it was something that kind of gave me a lot of perspective, but it also gave me a lot of frustration because I was like, I spent like 30 odd years not knowing this about myself. If I'd known, what else could I have done? How much further could I have gone? And when I shared it with my manager at the time, who was my mentor, someone I really respected, it was something I actually came to regret because she then used that against me to say that I wasn't actually going to be an appropriate person for a promotion at work because we went to a conference together and listened to a senior engineer talk about how they've got ADHD and all the things they can and can't do, and she seemed to focus on all the things he can't do rather than all the things he can do. And that was my kind of wake-up moment to be like, I don't want to work here anymore. So I found a new career path and I found a new mentor, and that's something that you should always do. So yes, that's the two cases of diversity, I think.
Thinking about that question is quite interesting for me because sitting here, if people hadn't known that I'm ADHD, the initial perception people have is Caucasian man, which statistically speaking is afforded a lot more privilege than most people in society. What people also don't know, in addition to being ADHD, is I'm half Hispanic. So having the last name Carrero draws a lot of implicit judgments and biases across the board. And I bring this up because I can't think of a specific instance that was most prominent in terms of a challenge because it was quite salient throughout my life, which was when you go into an organization of any kind, it doesn't matter if it's a workplace or a classroom, the biggest challenge I had was finding people who were willing to believe in my character. Instead of people who were most often going, well, if you're a man, you should be able to do this. If you are from America, you should be able to do this. If you're half Hispanic, you should be able to speak Spanish. You should be able to do all these things, these prescribed expectations of what you should or should not be able to do. And I've noticed that's pretty salient in different cultures to begin with, in different workplaces, and to one capacity I understand how those develop, but when we do that, we set that person up for failure from the beginning because we are imposing this idea of saying, this is who you're supposed to be, and at no stage are we ever giving them the opportunity to be who they truly are and explore those strengths that even Vanessa had talked about. She didn't find these strengths and these interests until much later in life. And that's the case for a lot of us. And I think organizations and institutions sometimes have this implicit idea that people have a much better self-awareness than most people actually do. And here's the hard truth. Only 10 to 15% of the general population meet the criteria for being self-aware. And I can tell just by a few facial expressions, look at me, they're going, oh man, that explains a lot. And it's not to call anybody out. This is just a universal thing. So when we have institutional leaders putting these prescribed views on their subordinates and students saying, well, you should know your strengths. Really, take a look in the mirror. Because I can tell you from experience, I have bosses today that do not know themselves very well. So I would say the challenge that I really had was people trying to assess me based on their own personal experience rather than being willing to step away from that and out of that comfort zone to say, who is Justin and what is he capable of?
Can I start just saying what happened to me? Because it's not obvious and a lot of people try to know, and it's not a big deal for me to talk about it. I have a rare genetic condition, very rare. I am the third in the literature. So it took me 14 years to actually have my diagnosis. The symptoms started when I was 22 years old, just right after graduating to dentistry. I started having a bit of challenge to run, and then things started getting worse till I got to the wheelchair. And fortunately, I got my diagnosis when I was already in the wheelchair, but now I know the medication to control my symptoms, which is great, but that's what happened to me. So for 14 years, I actually did not know what would happen in my life. I did not know how many years I would survive. I did not know anything, what would happen to me. And I was just, from that moment onwards, trying to live my life in a way that I was happy, but also I think I got more sensitized to people's life and people's challenge, so how I could contribute at the same time, so like being happy, but looking for other people. That's how science came to my mind. Not that dentistry do not change lives, sometimes it does, but to me, scientific career, neuroscience specifically back then, it was the path that I chose because of my background. But when I came to Australia, I think the main part was language. It's quite challenging. People don't realize the impact that a language has. You know, of course, I do IELTS, great English, but for you to express yourself and learn something like neuroscience in another language is already challenging. If you are in a meeting room, which did happen to me many times, people will talk at the same time among each other, and I can only focus in one person talking. With time, you kind of develop being able to understand what everybody's talking at the same time. So the amount of information that you actually lose from learning a second language is huge. I think also, as I told you before, to get to know people, to have friends, it is challenging as well, because in another language, I knew technical language quite a lot, but not necessarily how to express my feelings. And for you to bond with people, you really need to show who you are, mentally speaking, your psychology, and this is so challenging in another language. So I kind of changed my personality at the beginning. I was quiet, I was shy, and I've never been like that in Brazil. So this, I believe it was a challenge as well. And I think, you know, the physical challenges together with the mental challenges of a PhD was also very hard. But at the end of the day, I think that I never got really sad with anything that was happening in my life. I don't know why. Because I think most of the time I was trying to focus in what I can do instead of what I cannot do anymore. And based on that, I think people felt comfortable coming to me and talking about their lives, their challenge, how to help. So I think that was a way that helped me overcome the challenges that I was having as well. So these were the challenges, but the lesson learned was how to overcome them, how to focus on the positive parts, and how I could use everything that I went through and was going through to kind of bring others with me.
Thank you, Vanessa, Justin and Brendan, for sharing those challenges and talking about how you overcame them. Okay, now I'll move on and ask you a question regarding support. So, Vanessa, sorry, Brendan, I must start with you this time. So regarding support, what has helped you get where you are? And that could be mindset, that can be change, support, determination, just to give you an idea. So back to you.
Life is funny, and I really think life brings you what you need. So surprisingly, back in Brazil, I was married over there. My ex-husband, he was paraplegic. I did not know what would happen to me, but at the end of the day, seeing him completely independent, extremely good professionally speaking, very successful, coming to Australia with me, when I got to the same point, I think it was kind of okay, because I saw that it was natural to me. So it's weird to say, but I must acknowledge that, yes, he has helped me a lot. It is one specific person. I think, of course, family does help, but you know Brazilians. They are like, no, you are suffering so much, please come here, I'll take care of you, and you are never going to do anything by yourself, I'll take care of you. So Brazilians are like this, and that's what I really didn't want for my life. But of course, their love and support was really good. So I think that was the support that I've got. And there is a second part of the question.
What has helped you get to where you are now?
That's it.
Okay. All right. Over to you.
Sure. For clarity, I was laughing when she said, Brazilians, because I have relatives in Brazil. So just clarity on that. My response to that question would probably have changed over the years based on what I was going through at that point in time. The thing about life is that we can't predict the challenges we're going to face. And we can't predict when they're going to happen, much less how significant they impact us. But throughout all of those, it took me a long time to really understand and appreciate the enormous value of unconditional love from your friends, family, whoever they are. And when I say unconditional, I'm going to quote my dear friend Lauren, who has a very rare genetic disability that taught me so much about it. She told me, unconditional is, I will support you and love you no matter what you're doing. I may not understand the idea. I may not necessarily agree with how you go about it, but I'm still going to support you. And that type of support is something that is just simply invaluable, because a lot of people will enter your life based on the value you offer them, and once that value is no longer there, they won't stick around. It's the people who will stick around when you have nothing to offer at that point in time, who still believe in what you're doing, who believe in your vision, who believe in what you're going to accomplish. That is the support system. But if they're there temporarily because of some kind of intangible value, don't expect them to stick around, because that's not unconditional. As Lauren taught me, that is conditional.
So for me, I think it's taken me, I'm 35 at the moment, and it's taken me almost this long to really love myself. So unconditional love, I think, is a great comment to make from other people, and I think that's really important, but it's actually really important for yourself as well, and it's something that took me a really, really long time to get to a level where I truly do love myself as much as I need to. Because there was a lot of shame. There was a lot of shame growing up I'm from far, far, far western country, Victoria, a small little country town called Adelaide. That growing up in a very sheltered culture as a queer person, there was a lot of inherent shame. I went to Catholic school. I was like head boy at my Catholic school, and I had to go do all the Catholic stuff, and it didn't stick. But that inherent level of shame takes years to undo. The shame that, I felt myself for just being lazy. I didn't apply myself because, you have so much potential, Brendan, but you didn't get 100, you only got a decent grade on whatever you did. And, years later, realising that that's obviously linked to the ADHD, but obviously having that level of shame associated with that as well, thinking, I am lazy, I could push myself harder, I could do better. So finally getting to a point where, I've got a great support group around me from friends and family, finding community, finding the place where I fit in, where I feel valued, and where, as Justin was saying, that, my presence isn't conditional, it is unconditional, has really led me to love myself and like myself. As I've gotten older, I've gotten a lot more visually gay, and that's for much as me as it is for anybody else, because, that visual representation, I can walk into a meeting and have painted nails or, sparkly shoes or a pin and still be very somewhat masculine presenting, I think, can rattle people. So that's a great start, put them on the back foot. But I also think it's a level of representation that I never had in my industry, and loving myself enough to put myself out there as someone that can, offer that level of support for others around me, I think is something that's really helped change my mindset.
Great, thank you. And I'm very passionate about mentorship and also sponsorship and support networks. So I'm going to ask you another question regarding that. So Vanessa, I'm going to start with you again, just to be fair. So what role do mentorship and support networks play in helping underrepresented groups overcome adversity in STEM? So mentorship and support networks.
I'll have to be very honest. I did not have that in Australia. or I did not know the right people to support me back then. But I really think what was really important to me was at least the people that were working with me at the lab. They've never shown any doubt that I would be able to do what I needed to do. And the way that they took what was happening with me was the best way possible. They were only, you let me know what you need, when you need, just tell me. We are not keeping asking you, do you need this, do you need that? Do you think you can go and do the surgery in the mice, in the rats? How are you going to take the boxes, the trolley, open airlock doors? I didn't know. And I was figuring that out, and I could do it without any help. Of course, it took a while, but I did not know who I could reach because I was the only person with a physical disability at the Florey Institute. But at the same time, I think my supervisor was great, and all of my colleagues, they were great because they've never doubted that I could do, or they've never shown to me that they doubted. And again, the best way to approach someone is not deciding by them what they are capable of doing or not. It's just offering help whenever they need, whatever they need, when and if they need. That's the best approach. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Building upon what she was talking about, and thinking about this question, it's kind of a paradoxical one for me, and here's why. Sponsorship, when it comes to creating change in any organization, it is essential to get executive sponsorship. I work with companies like IBM. There's an amazing consulting firm I work with. I would love to name them, but we have an NDA in place, where when we started talking about this neurodiversity study and doing something groundbreaking, they had buy-in from the CEO all the way on down. That's just unheard of. And when it comes to mentorship and sponsorship, I said it was paradoxical, and here's why. Because I've also been in situations where it was the senior leader who prevented any change from happening, or was quite literally my barrier. Perfect example. When I first applied to the PhD program at the University of Queensland, the head of the business school at the time, her and I had a meeting. She wanted to hear about the research and stuff like that, and she asked me, who are your supervisors? I said them. And you could just see this change in her eye. And the very next day, I received an email from the business school saying, we will not be nominating you for a scholarship. Well before the application announcements for everyone else. Yet, it was also in that same institution, there was a different executive leader who said, I believe in what he is going to do. And so I had to go back to Chicago for 6 months because my visa had expired. I was annoyingly stubborn and persistent and saying, I'm going to get back to Australia and do that PhD. And it was that other leader who also believed in me who said, I'm going to stand by your side. And she was the one who made it possible. So when we talk about sponsorship and mentorship, essentially what I'm getting at is this. The leaders play such a critical role every step of the way. But it's not just the act of being a leader. It is the character of that leader and whether or not they truly believe in what they're saying, or if they are verbalizing it in such a way to simply maintain a certain appearance, and when their actions will say something completely different. So in other words, for anyone here who is seeking mentorship or sponsorship, actions always speak louder than words. Find a leader who is consistent with their behavior.
Look, the importance of mentorship is something that's very much played out throughout my career. And it's also worth noting that a mentorship doesn't have to be a long-term thing. It can be very specific, it can be very situational. If it doesn't feel right, then don't push it. It's a bit like a relationship. And, I've had really good opportunities to have people in my life that I wouldn't have expected to be such strong advocates for me and such strong supports straight white men. But they've turned out to be some of the best mentors that I've had, and I've had the same mentor in the water industry now for 15 years, and he's the biggest advocate for me, and I very much appreciate everything he does for me. He's always lifted me up and believed in me, and big supporter of Pride on Water. Encouraging him to do things in his own organisation and seeing him kind of commit to that. So verbalising his words and into actions, which was amazing to see. And then on the flip side, like I said, I had a mentor who I was extremely close with and helped me get a lot of technical things through in my previous job. But as soon as the issue of ADHD came up, it just kind of broke the relationship, and it was like, okay, well, this isn't working for either of us. And so as much as I've got a lot of value out of this mentorship relationship, it's done. And I need to walk away, and I don't think you don't need to persist with mentor situations if they aren't going to help you thrive or help the other person thrive as well. But the most I've learned about mentorship, I think, is when I was approached by someone through an organisation called Out for Australia to be a mentor. So that's where I knew that I was getting old, because I was no longer the mentee, I was the mentor. Got put in touch with a queer woman in Queensland with a very similar kind of background and experience to me from a technical perspective, working in the same industry. And I think that's what really highlighted to me that, I think we can very much drill technical careers down to mentorships in terms of what people similar to us, we should, talk to them and get their advice. But I think that aspect of identity and someone who knows some of the adversity that you've gone through to get to where you are, that also works in that field, was a real eye-opener for me, because I think the commonality and the shared experience that we had outside of our technical experience really helped us to bond. And we ended up writing a paper together and co-presenting it, and I just absolutely adored that relationship, and she's absolutely thriving in Queensland now, so I keep encouraging her to move down to Melbourne, but for some reason she seems happy there, I don't know. So.
Excellent, thanks very much everyone. And Justin, don't think you're safe. The next question is for you. We're going to start with you this time. So my question is about advocacy this time. So how can we create a more inclusive environment to reduce the barriers faced by underrepresented groups? Over to you, Justin.
This is a bit of a loaded question, but at the same time it's not. It very much links back to what I was just talking about before, of the character of the leader. And the reason why is this. Leaders really set the tone for an entire organization. It's referred to as role modeling. We saw this with Westpac when they rolled out a new learning and education program offering classes. They saw the participation rate from employees skyrocketed once they heard the CEO was also partaking in those classes, and they could see the CEO's progress. So when we're talking about inclusion, I think some of the most powerful advocacy, we see it here today, comes from within. The very people who organized this incredible event have done a remarkable job. And it was organized by, frontline employees. And when we're having these conversations about how do we create a more inclusive atmosphere, one area I look at, and it's largely because Australia just loves their policies, policy everything. It's interesting to me because in one regard, policies are really important. They serve as a regulatory basis to say, here's what is considered acceptable or unacceptable behavior within our organization. Those also are used as a backbone for people to justify their behavior, whether it's positive, neutral, or negative. So that is a critical area to really start, because that really serves as a legal framework. In saying that, the parties who are responsible for developing those policies or have access to the modification or implementation of them seldomly partake in these discussions. So when I'm looking at who develops policies for Monash, for example, Clayton, Caulfield, anything like that, the Monash Graduate Research Office, are they necessarily here today? I don't really see them, no one raised their hand. So that speaks volumes. And if we're going to talk about creating inclusion, it requires getting all of the key stakeholders involved. Students, staff, executive leaders. and because executive leaders play such a key driving force in the implementation and modification of those very policies and programs. And as much as sometimes leaders can kind of fall into that trap of just, turning to excuse to say, well, we just can't do that, or it's just, it doesn't move that fast. We saw it happen when COVID hit. Companies who said, oh, working from home is not possible, quite literally changed their entire operation overnight to make it possible. So it really starts with bringing all key stakeholders to the table: students, advocates, teachers, casual staff, and executives. And if we can create that change, that cultural change from the top, from the beginning, the odds of success increase tremendously. The company I was talking about before that I'm still doing remarkable work with, the CEO has been a pioneering change in all of that. And she herself came out saying, I believe in this because I myself am ADHD. That's pretty bold. I don't know how many of us know of a CEO who comes out admitting they have a disability like that. But it had a ripple effect, because when I was doing interviews with employees later, I had so many who were brand new, who were triple minorities, saying, I feel like I'm allowed to be myself now because she said that. It has a big impact. So when we talk about inclusion, I always first look to say, are the leaders of that organization who have the biggest influence out of anybody in that institution, are they taking part in that conversation? And if the answer is no, my next question is, why not?
You should have been the last one. Everything that I could talk, what you said. Yeah, my point of view is way simpler, but I really think representativeness is something that it's missing in education. And even for leaders, I think sometimes they do not change because they don't know what is possible, because they have preconceptions. And when you educate and when you have representativeness, you might change people's point of view, and everything starts to change from there. So to me is, being out there trying to help people, or people to see that yes, it is possible for you to achieve so many great things in life, even if you have, in my case, a physical disability. How can you actually do that? A lot of people in Brazil, for example, they contact me because first of all, they don't know how they can study abroad. They don't understand scholarships. They think they have necessarily to pay for that. They don't even know the opportunities. And they think that because of physical disabilities, they might not receive scholarships, for example, which sometimes it is true, and it needs to change, but not most of the time. A lot of people come talk to me about the permanent residency. It's another challenge that people don't realize. Australian government, they don't give you a permanent residency if you are going to make them spend money with your health. They are going to balance how much money you can give to the country and how much money you are going to take from the country. And based on that, they are going to give you a permanent residency or not. So people come to talk to me to understand what are the possibilities that I had to go through for my life. So anyway, I think the main point here is representativeness and education. Yeah, simpler.
Thank you very much. I think especially in the LGBTIQ plus space, creating a sense of agency for people who are part of the community to advocate for themselves is really important. I think a lot of HR and people in culture groups try to do a lot for underrepresented communities, which is, it's lovely, but it's not as impactful as it could be without, providing the actual space for those people to do it for themselves. So, a well-placed intention is never going to be as powerful as providing a platform for an unheard voice. And so what the company I worked at did really well was that executive buy-in, and we did try to get Pride in Water up off the ground. the HR group didn't come and just take it off of us and go, we're just going to slap a few rainbows up and that'll fix everything. This very basic approach to diversity and inclusion, it has an impact, but it's only the beginning. So what they did is created the space for us to lead the change, because we knew what needed to happen, and it was easier and better for us to develop the skills and have the support to do that, to make a more effective change. And I think what organisations can do more is find those opportunities for people, create the space, use your ability to elevate their voices, provide them the support, provide them the training. I think initially it took a lot of advocacy on our own behalf to get the company to realise that you're almost asking us to do an entrepreneurial startup business with this organisation, and there's a lot of skill sets that inherently we don't have and people expect us to have. So training and development for those things, which is very left of field from what our actual day jobs were, but they supported what we called our gay jobs. We had 2 jobs for the organisation. We had day jobs and gay jobs. And my technical day job skills weren't necessarily transferable without further learning to really make Pride and Water thrive. So that was really important, was creating that space.
Thanks very much, Vanessa, Justin and Brendan. And I think in the interest of time, we might move to the last question. I've got the nod from Christine there. Okay, so the wrap-up question, and this time I'll hand over to you, Brendan, first. Okay, so what advice would you give to students and scientists in the field working towards their career?
Mm-hmm. Whatever you have in your mind right now in terms of what you're going to be doing for the rest of your career, it's wrong. I think Vanessa would agree, listening to her story. So, I was very dead set keen on getting into the biopharmaceutical space after university with my 2 degrees. It was the best kind of combination of what I was going to do. And then as part of my engineering experience, I had to go out and do work experience, and I did it for like 6 months, and I was like, I hate this. This is terrible. Have I wasted the last 5 or 6 years of my life doing this? But I found a new passion through an honours project I had to do, which was about finding sustainable ways to provide drinking water to rural communities in Africa, and it gave me a new sense and it gave me a new purpose. And even through the last 15 years of my career, I was very dead set keen on wanting to be just in operations and just be very hands-on. Again, should have been early science for ADHD, but because studying and technical and all that kind of stuff just wasn't my thing. But the very hands-on approach was much more appealing to me. But then after 5 or so years, that got boring, and I wanted to go build things. And after that, I wanted to go design things. And now I'm working in a big strategy space. So even within an industry, even within a specific field, you're going to have so much diversity to your career. And the best thing you could possibly do is just be open to that, because diversity is beautiful.
I was originally going to say always keep an open mind, so thank you for stealing my thunder on that one. No, building upon that, actually, being open is really essential, because if you told me I was going to do a PhD when I finished my undergraduate, I would have told you that you needed a psychological assessment. I was that convinced, but staying open to new opportunities and new ideas that challenge everything we think or feel is really how we create change, period. And my advice to all of you is essentially 2 things. You are going to get pushback from anyone and everyone, because many people like the idea of change, but for many, they're not ready to change themselves. And so they will push it back onto you, saying, your idea is not good. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know anything about this. And the truth is, most of the time you do. They're just not ready to admit it. So if you believe in what you are doing, if you believe in your idea, you do not give up whatsoever. And do not let anyone tell you otherwise. Because if I let anyone tell me otherwise, I would not be sitting here right now. I would have dropped out of the PhD program 3 years ago from feeling like a colossal idiot. And so pretty much you gotta expect rejections and develop that resilience up front. Just know they're gonna happen. It's not an attack on you. It's not an attack on your intellect. It's a representation of their insecurity of being open to a new way of doing things. So you find people who believe in what you're doing. You find people who believe in your character and what you're about to do. And even if you fail along the way, great. I've failed 1,000 times. That model changed 1,000 times. But we finally found the time it worked. So, keep an open mind. Believe in yourself, even when no one's willing to believe in you. It is your idea. It is your vision. Just because they can't see it doesn't mean it's not true. They just can't see it yet.
I do agree with both of you, so I will just complement with a few more other viewpoints. I think to me, I had probably 2 or 3 different visions for 10 years. It was like plan A, B, and C. I was always like this, but I think if you are always looking at the goal, it seems so far away that you don't take small actions to get where you want. So for me, what I think it was extremely important was to have small milestones and kind of acknowledge each one of them when I was getting there. If you only look at the final, where you want to go, it's so far away that you are going to give up, probably, at the very beginning. So small milestones. Be aware that, yes, you need to trust yourself, but you are going to doubt yourself so many times. And I still do that every single day. But at the end of the day, if you realize that you are just a human being, someone working with you is just a human being, and when you are open with most of people, not all of them, you need to choose carefully, and you open yourself saying, I'm feeling, a bit insecure here and there. They open themselves as well, and then you become a bigger team instead of isolated people. And you bring people with you, and people, they tend to help each other when they bond. So to me, this is one of the best things as well. Have people that you can trust, that you can be yourself, that can kind of go with you along the way, and have small milestones. Don't forget that, yes, you are going to doubt yourself. You are going to cry, and just do things crying, but keep going. That's, I think, the main part. Yeah, thanks.
What a great note to end on. I'm sure you'll all agree that was a fantastic panel discussion. So please join me in thanking Dr. Vanessa Penna. Yep. Dr. Justin Carrero. And Brendan Moore. Thank you.
Dosa Pharma acknowledges the traditional custodians of the various lands throughout Australia on which we connect today, and pays respect to elders past, present, and future.